This is something I've never done before, sharing my story online. I'm using a throwaway account because, honestly, I don't want this connected to my real life. I don't even know why I'm doing this. Maybe I'm looking for clarity. Maybe I just need to let it all out. My name is Sarah, and for privacy's sake, I'll call my ex-boyfriend John. John and I were together for nearly 5 years. At first, everything felt perfect, until it didn't. Here's the thing about me. I've always loved pranks. Not just the occasional joke, I'm talking full-on prankster mode. Pulling off a clever prank gave me a weird sense of satisfaction. And yes, John was often my main target. In the beginning, my pranks were lighthearted. I'd stick goofy notes around his apartment or secretly swap his coffee with decaf just to mess with him. He'd usually give me that half-annoyed, half-amused smile that I absolutely adored. But while I loved the chaos, John was wired differently. He's someone who values stability, predictability, peace, really. And while he didn't say much back then, I realize now that he was simply tolerating the pranks, not enjoying them. Back then, I thought it was just our thing. I truly believed that if he wasn't complaining, everything must be fine. I never stopped to consider that maybe he was silently getting worn down. Then, one of my friends suggested something that planted a dangerous seed. Why not make videos of your pranks? You'd go viral for sure. I laughed at the idea at first. I wasn't the type to post online. My own social media was basically a ghost town. But then life threw me off course. I got laid off. It wasn't personal, just corporate downsizing. Still, it hit hard. Suddenly, I had way too much time and even more anxiety. Out of boredom, I found myself spending hours on social media. And that's when I noticed it, couples making prank videos and racking up millions of views. It was everything I used to do, but they were filming it, editing it, and turning it into profit. Some of them had sponsors, merchandise, even full-blown careers. And that's when I thought, why not me? At first, the whole concept of turning pranks and goofy moments into a real career felt like a stretch, almost laughable. I mean, I wasn't a content creator. I had no clue how to edit videos, build a following, or market myself. It was a world I had only observed from a distance. But the more I thought about it, the more it started to pull me in. I was unemployed, restless, and desperate for something that gave me purpose again. The idea of never having to clock into an office, never having to sit through another awkward job interview, or tweak my resume for the 100th time, it was intoxicating. I imagined a life where I could work from home, on my own schedule, doing something that felt fun rather than draining. What if I really could make it work? What if people actually liked my stuff? What if John and I blew up and became one of those viral couples that everyone followed? It was like a fantasy I couldn't stop replaying. I kept telling myself, I already had the creativity. I already had years of prank experience under my belt. Social media was exploding with content just like mine. People were literally getting rich off silly videos. Why not me? So one evening, while we were sitting together on the couch after dinner, I gently floated the idea to John. I didn't want to come on too strong, so I framed it as something fun, something harmless we could try for a laugh. But the look he gave me said everything. He didn't argue, but I could tell this wasn't something he was excited about. He gave me a vague shrug and said, "You can do whatever you want, just leave me out of it." My heart sank a little. I had hoped for more, maybe even that he'd want to do it with me as a team. But he wasn't completely shutting me down. He wasn't forbidding it or asking me not to start. So I took that as a green light. And from that moment on, I went all in. The very next day, I began my deep dive into the world of content creation. I watched tutorial after tutorial, how to shoot video on a budget, how to set up lighting, how to edit without experience. I created lists, compared equipment, watched reviews late into the night. It was like I had discovered a brand new purpose, and I was hungry to master it. Within a few days, I had ordered a beginner-friendly ring light, a simple tripod, and a modest but decent camera. I even splurged a little and bought basic video editing software, something that promised a smooth learning curve. I told myself that if I was going to do this, I'd do it right. Once everything arrived, I set up a little filming corner in our apartment. Nothing fancy, just a white wall, some good lighting, and a quiet spot to work. Then came the first test, recording my very first prank video. I knew I had to start small. Nothing over the top. Just a taste of what I could do. So I went with the classic, the fake spider prank. I carefully placed a rubber spider on the toilet seat, strategically positioned to be unavoidable. Then I positioned the camera so it was hidden but still had a clear shot of the doorway. And then I waited. When John walked into the bathroom and saw it, his reaction was golden. He jumped back with a startled, "What the hell?" and then he laughed. Not a belly laugh, but enough of a chuckle to make me feel like it was okay. I captured the entire thing. The setup, the scare, the laugh. It was perfect. I stayed up late editing that night, figuring out how to trim clips, add music, and throw on a funny caption. When I finally posted it, I had no idea what to expect. But then, it started getting views. Not millions or anything, but people watched. A few liked it. Some even left comments like, "LOL poor John," and "This is hilarious, do more." That tiny trickle of validation? It felt like everything. And just like that, I was hooked. The rubber spider prank turned out better than I had hoped. I hid my phone in just the right spot, crouched out of sight, and waited as John walked into the bathroom. The moment he saw that fake spider on the toilet seat, he jumped back with a loud, startled, "What the hell?" Then, almost immediately, he realized it wasn't real and laughed. It was perfect. Short, simple, harmless, and completely on brand for the kind of humor I'd always loved. I spent the evening editing the footage, cutting out the boring parts, adding some silly background music, and tossing in a funny little caption at the end. It was my first real post on the new prank account I'd just created. I didn't expect much from it. Maybe a couple of views. Maybe a pity like or two from friends. But to my surprise, it actually got attention. Not viral attention, not yet, but enough to spark something in me. A few comments rolled in, people laughing, asking for more, saying they'd done the same prank to their partner. And that small bit of engagement? It was like fuel to a fire I didn't realize had already started burning. Encouraged by that little success, I quickly moved on to the next idea. This time, I swapped the sugar in John's morning coffee with salt. Classic. Predictable. But still funny. I filmed the moment as he took a sip, paused, and gave me a death stare while slowly setting the cup down. "Seriously?" he muttered, clearly annoyed but not furious. That familiar look, half exhausted, half amused, was enough to make me giggle behind the camera. I ended the recording before he could complain too much and edited it that same night. Again, the response was decent. Not viral, but encouraging. At first, it was thrilling. There was something so energizing about putting myself out there and watching strangers respond. I was doing something I loved and actually getting noticed for it. And for someone who had felt pretty lost and aimless after losing her job, that meant everything. I started to believe, really believe, that maybe this wasn't just a temporary distraction. Maybe I could actually turn this into something real. I told myself, people start small all the time. They just keep posting, keep building, and suddenly, bam, they're influencers. So I kept going. Day after day, I filmed more pranks. I edited, posted, engaged with comments, read tips on how to grow an audience. Every little notification on my phone gave me a dopamine rush. A like? A new follower? Someone sharing my video? It felt like progress. But as the days passed, that early excitement started to shift into something heavier. Because the truth was, decent views weren't enough anymore. I didn't want just some engagement. I wanted millions. I wanted to go viral. I wanted the kind of attention that could completely change my life. I wanted sponsorships, brand deals, fan pages. I wanted to be the girl people talked about, the one who made her relationship funny and relatable online. And deep down, I wanted to prove to myself and maybe even to John, that this wasn't just some silly little phase. That I could really make it. But that hunger for validation? It started to cloud my judgment. That's when I realized something that should have scared me, but didn't. If I wanted the kind of success I dreamed about, I'd need to take bigger risks. The harmless pranks, the fake spider, the salty coffee, they were cute. But cute wasn't viral. Cute didn't make headlines or get people sharing. If I wanted to break through, I'd have to push further. As the weeks went by, I started stepping up the pranks, not in a dramatic way at first, just small tweaks here and there to get a slightly bigger reaction out of John. One time, I pretended I'd lost his keys right before he had to head out for an important appointment. He chuckled, but I saw it, that flicker of frustration behind his eyes. Still, I brushed it off. To me, it was harmless. I thought, it's all in good fun, right? But even as I nudged the limits, the results stayed the same. The views weren't terrible, but they weren't blowing up either. A couple thousand here, a few hundred there. Decent, but not enough. I wanted more. I wanted the kind of numbers that changed your life overnight. I was chasing that viral high like it was a finish line just out of reach. So I pushed harder. I started crafting more elaborate scenarios, ones that required setup, timing, and sometimes a little deception. Like the time I faked a Wi-Fi outage in the apartment for a full day, fully knowing that John depended on the internet to get his work done. He was clearly annoyed, especially when he had to reschedule a client call, but when I told him it was a prank, he just stared at me in silence, then turned and walked away. Then there was the juice incident. I accidentally spilled bright red juice on his favorite button-down, the one he always wore on big presentations. I had a backup shirt ready, but the look on his face when he thought it was ruined, that stayed with me longer than I'd like to admit. And still, I kept filming, kept editing, kept uploading. I told myself it was all okay as long as no real harm was done. But in hindsight, I was blind. I was so fixated on growing my account, getting the numbers, reaching that next level, that I started ignoring the obvious. John wasn't laughing anymore. His sighs got longer, his silences heavier. He didn't argue, but that almost made it worse. It was like he was slowly giving up, not just on the pranks, but maybe on me. But the rush of the algorithm had me in its grip. When you're chasing virality, it's like being in a tunnel. All you can see is more. How do I make this bigger? Better? Sharper? How do I get them to share, comment, like, follow? It's addicting. It warps your sense of what's okay. And then I crossed a line I can never uncross. It was a prank that still makes me cringe, one that wakes me up some nights with a pit in my stomach. John had a major business meeting, something he'd been prepping for all week. While he was in the middle of it, I called him, voice shaking, fake crying, telling him the house was on fire. I even went as far as texting him a photo I found online of a burned-out living room. He panicked. He dropped everything, canceled the meeting, rushed home. I was waiting for him, camera rolling, ready to reveal it had all been a joke. But when he walked through the front door, wild-eyed and terrified, and found everything perfectly fine, he didn't speak at first. He just stood there, staring at me. And then came the explosion. He was furious, rightfully furious. His voice was shaking as he asked me what the hell I was thinking. I tried to laugh it off like I always did, but this time, there was no saving it. I remember saying, "It's just a prank, babe," and instantly regretting it. He didn't find it funny. He didn't even find it frustrating. He found it hurtful. He looked at me like I was someone he didn't recognize anymore. Like he didn't know how we had gotten here. He told me to stop. He told me I was going too far. But I didn't listen. Even after all that, even after seeing the pain on his face, I still clung to the hope that one more big video, one perfect viral moment, would make it all worth it. And then, New Year's Eve arrived. I was scrolling on TikTok that afternoon when I saw it, a video from another couple staging a fake lottery win. The reactions, the chaos, the reveal, it was dramatic, over the top, and absolutely viral. The video had racked up millions of views in just days. And that's when something dangerous clicked in my mind. I thought, if they can go viral, so can I. Only this time, I wasn't going to fake winning the lottery. No, I had something more shocking in mind. That TikTok video kept replaying in my mind. A couple had staged a fake lottery win, dramatic, chaotic, full of screaming and laughter. The reactions were completely over the top, and people couldn't get enough. The video had gone viral in the most insane way, millions of views, thousands of comments, shares across every platform. And all I could think was, I want that. Not just the attention, but the validation. The proof that I could pull something massive off. The proof that I mattered. That's when it hit me my moment could be New Year's Eve. The timing was perfect. Everyone was online. Everyone was scrolling. What better day to unleash a bold, unforgettable prank that would blow up the internet and kick off the year with a bang? I started planning obsessively. I told myself I wanted it to be funny, something so outrageous that people would have no choice but to laugh and share. But if I'm being honest, it wasn't really about the humor anymore. I wasn't doing it to make people laugh. I was doing it to be seen. And so I landed on what I thought was a brilliant idea: the fake cheating prank. Yes, I know how that sounds. Completely reckless. But back then, in that twisted tunnel vision of mine, it felt like a stroke of genius. The goal was simple: set up a scenario that would make it look like John walked in on me cheating. I wanted it to be so convincing, so dramatic, so completely unbelievable that it had to go viral. I reached out to my friend, let's call him Ivan. He'd been a good sport in the past, laid back, and always down for some fun. But when I told him the idea, even he hesitated. Are you serious? He asked, raising an eyebrow. This could go really bad, Sarah. And that should have stopped me. When the chill friend starts getting nervous, you know you're crossing a line. But I was relentless. I told him it was harmless. A joke. That John would laugh once he realized what it was. I painted a picture of how viral it could get, how people would eat it up, how it would be our big break. Eventually, with clear reluctance, Ivan agreed. We scheduled everything around John's return from a 3-day business trip. I knew the flight time. I had his ETA down almost to the minute. Everything was set. That evening, Ivan came over and we prepared the scene. I made sure the camera was hidden, angled perfectly to capture his entrance and his reaction. We got into bed, stripped down just enough to sell the illusion, and slipped under the sheets. My heart was pounding, but not from guilt, from excitement. All I could think about was how insane this footage would look. I was so focused on the content that I completely ignored the consequences. And then, I heard the sound of John's car pulling into the driveway. That was the cue. Ivan and I started making noises, loud, exaggerated, completely over the top. I wanted it to be undeniable what John thought he was walking into. I had no idea that what I thought would be the most viral video of my life would actually be the end of everything. The moment John stepped through the front door, we knew he had heard everything. The exaggerated moans, the ridiculous noises, meant to sound like something intimate, something unmistakable. He rushed up the stairs, confusion painted across his face, until he reached the bedroom. And then, everything fell apart. The second he saw Ivan and me under the sheets, half-dressed, pretending to be in the middle of something we weren't, his expression shifted. It wasn't anger at first. It was something far worse. It was heartbreak. A raw, gut-wrenching kind of pain crossed his face, the kind that makes your chest tighten just looking at it. But that pain didn't stay long. It transformed quickly, violently, into fury. He yanked the sheets off the bed with shaking hands, shouting, demanding answers. I couldn't even get a word out before the room filled with his voice, rage, and disbelief all wrapped in one. And what did I do? I laughed. Yes, I laughed. Because in my mind, this was still just a prank. A joke. A brilliant piece of content we'd all laugh about later. It's a prank, babe. It's just a joke. I kept repeating it like some broken record, hoping it would somehow flip a switch in his brain and make him see what I saw. But he wasn't laughing. Not even close. Ivan, who had clearly realized how wrong this was standing there like a statue, mumbling, "It's not real, man. It's just a prank." His voice was quiet, ashamed. But John wasn't listening. He turned to me, eyes wide with a kind of finality I had never seen before, and said flatly, "Get out." I froze. He didn't shout this time. He didn't argue. He just said he was done. He couldn't take it anymore. That I had crossed the line one time too many. That I wasn't just playing around anymore. I was toxic. He wanted me out of his life. Out of his house. Out. I was too stunned to speak. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. We were supposed to laugh. To hug. To joke about how dramatic it all looked on camera. But this? This was real. Ivan, looking like he wanted to vanish into thin air, mumbled an apology and slipped out the door. I didn't stop him. I couldn't. I just stood there in shock as John paced the room, his voice low but steady. There was no arguing. No negotiation. Just one sentence over and over again. "I want you to leave." And that's when it hit me he meant it. This wasn't a fight we'd recover from. So I did the only thing I could. I packed a bag. Tears streamed down my face as I shoved clothes and toiletries into a duffel. My hands were trembling. My heart felt like it had caved in on itself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn back time. I wanted to delete that night from existence. But I couldn't. And when I was done, he didn't drive me to my parents' house. He ordered me an Uber. That hurt more than anything. It was cold. Final. Like he couldn't even bear to share a car ride with me. I cried the entire way there. The driver didn't say a word, just glanced at me in the rearview mirror now and then with that awkward, pitying look people give you when they know you're shattered, but don't know how to fix it. When I got to my parents' house, I looked like a complete wreck. My face was blotchy, eyes swollen from crying. I dragged my bag up the steps like it weighed 100 pounds. They opened the door, shocked to see me standing there like that, no warning, no call, just their daughter in pieces. They rushed me inside, sat me down, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. And once I could finally breathe again, I told them everything. The prank. The fake scene. John's reaction. And how, in trying to go viral, I had blown up the one thing that actually mattered in my life. I had hoped naively that when I told my parents what had happened, they'd be supportive. That they'd hug me, reassure me, tell me it was all just a mistake. But instead, they were angry. Not at John, at me. The moment I finished explaining everything, the room filled with a thick, heavy silence. My dad looked at me in disbelief. My mom shook her head, eyes filled not with sympathy, but disappointment. And then the questions came, sharp and pointed. "What did you think was going to happen, Sarah? You thought faking something like that would end well? Humiliating someone who's loved you for 5 years, how is that supposed to be funny?" They didn't sugarcoat anything. They didn't try to soften the blow. And honestly, they were right. What I had done wasn't just immature or tone-deaf. It was cruel. I didn't want to admit that before, but hearing it from the people who raised me made it impossible to ignore. But the fallout didn't stop there. Word of what happened spread faster than I could process. Friends started reaching out, some because they'd heard through mutual circles, others because John had spoken to them directly. Either way, their messages all carried the same tone: disbelief, anger, disappointment. Text after text flooded my phone. People I thought were in my corner told me flat out that I had gone too far. That what I did was messed up. That I needed to apologize, not just to John, but to everyone who had to witness the disaster. Even Ivan, who had been in the prank with me, reached out. He sent a long, uncomfortable message saying how awful the whole thing had made him feel. That he hadn't wanted to go through with it, that I had pushed him, and that he regretted every second of it. He begged me not to post the video. And that was the breaking point for me. I remember staring at my screen, rereading his message over and over. And all I could think was, if I'm not going to post the video, then what was the point of all this? What had I destroyed my relationship for? Why had I humiliated myself, my boyfriend, my friend, if I wasn't even going to get content out of it? I try to justify it to myself. Maybe if I blur John's face, I thought. Maybe if I edit it carefully, it'll still work. But deep down, I already knew it was over. Too many people knew the truth. And John had made his stance crystal clear. He didn't just want that one video gone. He wanted everything wiped from my channel. Every clip, every post, every trace of himself removed from my digital life. He wanted a full erase. I cried as I messaged him, begging him to reconsider. I tried everything: apologies, mutual friends, long-winded texts about how sorry I was. I even asked people we both knew to talk to him for me. But he wouldn't respond. He was done. The man I had shared 5 years of my life with had cut me off like a switch. Blocked me on every platform. Left no room for a final conversation, no space for closure. And just like that, it was over. A few days later, he let me come back, just long enough to pack the rest of my things. He wasn't home when I arrived. He had left a key with someone else. 5 years. Gone. No goodbye. But as if that wasn't already enough, another blow came. My account, the one I had poured my soul into, got banned. All the hours I'd spent filming, editing, uploading, vanished. Just like that. I don't even know who reported it. Maybe it was John or one of the friends I'd alienated. Maybe someone flagged the content anonymously. All I know is one moment I was scrolling through my videos, trying to figure out my next move. And the next, I was locked out. Permanently. And for the first time, I realized I had nothing left. I planned what I thought was a next-level prank, something that would take my content to the big leagues. Instead, it cost me everything. In one night, my relationship, my reputation, and the platform I had spent months building were gone. Just like that. And the worst part? I couldn't even process how fast it all collapsed. One moment, I was dreaming about blowing up online, and the next, I was sitting alone in my childhood bedroom, heartbroken, humiliated, and completely lost. All because I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop chasing numbers, likes, attention, validation from strangers who didn't even know me. I ignored every warning, every uncomfortable look, every plea to slow down. I told myself it was just ambition. But no, it was greed. Plain and simple. 5 years. 5 whole years with John wiped away in seconds because I couldn't draw the line between content and cruelty. And the pain? It hits me in waves. It still doesn't feel real. Sometimes I replay the whole thing in my head and it feels like a movie, a bad one. But it happened. It happened so violently and so quickly that I still get emotional whiplash trying to understand where it all went wrong. One moment, I was filming fake drama. The next, I was living in the aftermath of real heartbreak. And now I'm at square one. No boyfriend, no content, no platform, no income. My so-called career as a content creator? It's over. That chapter didn't just close, it slammed shut, locked itself, and threw away the key. And truthfully, I'm not sure I ever want to open it again. Because what's the point? It destroyed the best thing I had. Now I spend my days scrolling endlessly through job listings, desperately trying to find something, anything, that can help me move forward. But it's like dragging yourself uphill with no shoes, no strength, and no direction. Living with my parents? It's not a solution, it's a pause. And the clock is ticking. They've been kind, patient, but I know it won't last forever. I can already feel the subtle hints, little comments about contributing to groceries or helping with bills. Soon, they'll be more direct. And I can't even be mad at them. I'm an adult. I should be standing on my own 2 feet. But right now, I can barely breathe. And then there's the social part of it. Or the absence of it. Losing John didn't just take away my partner. It took away half of my social circle. So many of our mutual friends, people I thought cared about me, sided with him, and they didn't even try to hide it. I don't blame them. I crossed a line, and I know it. But that doesn't make the isolation any easier. It hurts in a way I can't even describe. Even the few friends who haven't fully cut me off, well, they're still close to John. And that makes every interaction weird. Tense. It's like there's a wall between me and everyone I used to love. A thick fog of shame and awkwardness I can't seem to get past. So I sit. Most days, I just sit on my bed, in the dark, scrolling endlessly or staring at the ceiling, trying to feel anything other than regret. Some days I don't even get out of bed. I feel useless, broken, stupid. Because the truth is, this wasn't just a relationship I ruined. It was a life. We were planning for the future, talking about marriage, about kids, about the kind of home we wanted. It wasn't just romantic talk, it felt real, solid, something worth fighting for. And now, it's all gone. Erased by one reckless, selfish decision. All that time, all that love, all those plans. Destroyed because I couldn't see past my own obsession with going viral. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to finally see what truly matters. I chased a dream, and in the process, I lost the very person who believed in me from the start. I let views matter more than values. I let fake reactions replace real connection. And by the time I realized it, it was already too late. If you're watching this and you've ever felt tempted to sacrifice something real for the sake of something online, please don't. No number on a screen is worth the people who love you in real life. And if you're like me, starting over, heartbroken, and unsure where to go next, just know, it's okay to fall. It's okay to mess up. But it's never too late to learn, to grow, to choose better next time. This isn't the end of my story. And maybe it's not the end of yours either. Thanks for listening.